It's a trap. Hello, everyone. Bront, CatHerder here. We're having some fun talking Raid Shadow Legends, and we are here on my free-to-pause account, but honestly, we'll be bouncing back and forth. It doesn't really matter what account we're on right now. I want to talk a little bit about a couple of early game traps that it is very easy for new players to fall into. And in some cases, even some experienced players just don't quite get what the issue is. Some of these are from comments that I have received on some videos recently. Some of them are from a takeover I did recently where I had to explain something to somebody. And I don't want to come at this as I know more than you guys or anything like that. This is constructive criticism and a way to inform you on some things that you may or may not know about Raid, or why we tell you the way things really are the way they are. So without further ado, let's kind of dive into things we're going to talk about in the video. So first of all, one of the things I want to talk about is one of the hardest things to sort of understand about this style of game as well. And a lot of people have been playing for a while probably do understand it. But I'm here on Lord Fabian Entertainer right now, at least on my free to play here. And you can see my Fabian is a 5-star 50. So, well, what does that mean? Well, it means that he has an entire another star and ascensions that he can get. In some cases, that 6-star ascension could give bonus stats such as speed or accuracy or resistance or crit rate are generally the ones that you tend to get out of that. Sometimes you get other stats out of the 6-star ascension as well, but for the most part, you get stats for being a 6-star over a 5-star, and everyone kind of knows that. But to what scale does it matter? Well, here's one of the reasons why people tell you get your first 6-star first. For champions, honestly, for any champion. So we look at here, and Fabian's base stats are above me. So he's got, 13,500 HP. He's got 870 attack. He's got just under 800 defense. So this is him at a 5-star 50. Let's go take a look and see what he's at when he's a 6-star 60. All right. So if you're ever curious what it could be with a 6-star 60, look them up in the index, because the stats in the index are the final stats that you can get. Now you'll notice his speed's a little bit faster, so he gets that either from the 6-star or the Ascension. I think his base speed was 104 and now it's 109. So he gets some additional speed from that, and 5 points of speed is nothing to sneeze at. That's a lot, especially on the base, which means anything such as speed boots or perception gear or anything like that can give him a bonus percentage as well. Not speed boots, but speed gear. And otherwise though, but the particular stats that are worth noting are that HP. So we are at 19,000 HP. We are at 12k attack. We are at 11k defense. And you're talking about a 50% increase in base stats. Now, these are base stats. So if I have an HP percent chest or an HP percent glove or defense percent glove, that percent is based off of the base stats. So 50% more here gives you 50% more everywhere there's a percentage stat increase, which is why getting champions to 6 stars is so important early on. 50% extra damage on a damage dealer because their attack is 50% higher is huge. It makes a huge difference it's the difference between being able to maybe do normal or hard campaign and be able to do brutal campaign with a solo farming champion. That's huge. It's the difference between not being able to kill anybody and easy to die in arena to be able to murderize your opponents in arena. It's the difference between being able to clear a dungeon at level 3 and a dungeon at level 10. It is that significant of a difference. So does this mean that every champion needs to be 6 stars to be useful? No, they actually don't. It means that damage dealers tend to get the most out of it, and the next that get the most out of it is tanky champions, such as revivers that you want tanky so they don't die, or just tanks that are going to need to take damage in order to do their job well. Otherwise, there's a lot of champions that you can use at 5-star because you get a little extra accuracy. Yes, you cannot actually put on a banner if you're not a 6-star, but other than that, if you've got the gear to make them work for the stat and the job that they're doing, you can do a lot of work with a couple of 5-stars. But the best way to turbocharge your account early on is to get a couple of 6-stars, because the power creep from 5-star to 6-star, especially in champions that are dependent on their stats, such as nukers and tanks, is huge. One of the other ones that can be a bit of a tricky thing to understand early on that people will say, but people don't always really understand, so we're going to do a little bit of math here, is the difference between a flat stat piece on the bottom row and a percentage stat piece on the bottom row. So we're talking your HP percent, your attack percent, and your defense percent versus your flat HP, your flat attack, and your flat defense. We're not ignoring other stuff for the moment. So we're ignoring your accuracy, your resistance, your speed, your crit damage, and your crit rate, which I guess is every other stat. So there are a couple people that have kind of been curious about, well, aren't there some champions where a flat stat would be better than a percentage-based stat? And the answer is, for the most part, absolutely not. And I might be looking at one of the few examples where I can make a case for one, and it's a really bad case. We're looking at Death Knight, the common, so he can't even be ascended. You'll notice he actually only has yellow stars there, so he cannot be ascended, and as a result his stats are generally pretty bad. So as you can see here, his stats are 13,500 HP, 550 attack, and 749 defense. So, you think maybe a flat attack piece might be better than a attack percentage piece on him. Well, we're going to take a look at a 6-star versus a 6-star. And that's actually pretty easy. A 6-star attack piece is either going to have 265 attack or is going to have 60% attack. So 60% of 550 is over 300. So a 6-star percent piece is going to be better for his attack, which is, I think, the lowest in the game, than it would be for a flat stat. So, okay, the only one worry is actually not true. He is not an exception to the rule. Generally, the flat stats are worse almost 100% of the time. Now, it's even worse in his particular case because he's an HP-based champion that actually does damage based on his HP, which means that you wouldn't want to put an attack chest on him anyway. So you may say, well, Bront, what about an HP chest? Well, an HP chest is either, again, still a 60% chest or 4,080 HP. Well, if he had 10,000 HP, he would still be getting 6,000 more additional HP from a flat stat, or not from a flat stat, from a percentage stat chest than he would be from a flat stat chest. So there is no champion in the game where a like for like piece of gear, a flat stat, is ever going to be better than a percentage stat. It's just not the case. And as they get bigger and higher base numbers, that number goes up more and more significantly. So you might ask, well, what's the point of ever keeping a flat stat piece? Well, in most cases, there isn't a point in keeping them, but I can actually show you one of the cases where I've got one on this very account. So here is my Fabian on my free to play. As you can see, he has a flat HP chest. So I am losing out on a ton of HP on this chest, but what I'm getting in return for this specific chest, in addition to the fact that this has got 15 points of speed on it because I've double hit into speed, making it one of the fastest pieces on this account. Honestly, that's kind of where my speed gear is on this account right now. It is also a speed set because the impulse set gives you plus 12% additional speed, and it gives me a 12% chance to reduce the skill cooldown by 1 turn if I've got another piece, which I do. I've got these wonderful, wonderful boots here that are absolutely amazing. So this piece enables me to get additional speed and additional other stats on a champion that hopefully I don't actually ever need the HP on anyway. So is this the best build? No. But for where this account is, this is a very good piece to hold on to because it has rolled speed, which is so, so critical. So the only places I really ever recommend keeping a flat piece of any kind is in gloves and in chests, in sets that are speed related, or for some other reason may have a set that you may want to grab. Now, I'm not a big fan of them in, stone skin, for example, because part of the reason you want a stone skin piece to be stone skin is you want to protect the champion. So losing out on a ton of defense or a ton of HP could be a problem for you in the future. So that may not be great. But if the substats are absolutely amazing, maybe it's not the worst case scenario. For perception, it may be the case as well. But generally, you're going to want to make sure those pieces have absolutely amazing substats. This one here, I rolled it because it had speed. I didn't have a lot of gear, and it double hit into speed, and then it had accuracy on top of that. Very good piece for a champion that probably won't get replaced for quite a while just because of the combination of the set and the substats for it. So it's doing well on this account for right now. Eventually, as I get later in the game, I'm not going to want that flat stat at all. Now, you might also say, Bront, you excluded boots, which also can have flat stats. But here's the thing with boots. Boots can have speed or some of these percentage stats. So if you're not going to go for speed for some strange reason, you want one of those percentage stats because that means you are trying to maximize that particular stat on those particular boots. If you are going flat stat, you can't get enough speed in a substat to make up for the fact that you're missing on speed. And you're already missing out on the base stat as well because you're missing out a bunch of extra bonus stats as well. So for the boots, you are better off going with either a percentage or speed, because if you're going to give up the chance at 45 speed, for example, of a 6-star pair of boots, well, maybe you're also going to, maybe you also still might want to have a substat of some speed on there. Well, you're not making up for the speed that you're totally there. You're going to certainly be losing a bit of it because even a good speed roll on that can't get higher than 30, and you're more likely to get something in the neighborhood of 15 to 20 at a really good speed roll on a pair of boots. So you're definitely going to be missing a ton of speed, so you don't want to be sacrificing any of those other stats. Now, there is one other kind of exception for keeping flat stat pieces for a very, very early game account. When you are struggling to get 6-star gear at all, there's a chance you may want to keep a flat piece, probably mostly on the chest area, for early on purposes. Because when I'm struggling to get 4-star gear, that 6-star flat attack or flat defense or flat HP still may not be quite as good as the 4-star, because even at 40%, you're still, you're kind of splitting hairs there. But you're still getting better substats, possibly. You're getting a set that might be useful in some early cases. And you're not losing a lot compared to what you're losing from a 6-star versus a 6-star piece. So early on, getting a 6-star piece, or maybe even a 5-star piece of a flat stat that happens to be in a good set, that happens to have the right set of stats on the substats that is what you're looking for, maybe early on you keep that. But you're going to move away from keeping those flat stats pretty quickly, usually within 2 weeks of moving on to the game. One of the other misconceptions that a lot of people have about this game is some people are very confused about why attack-based gloves are not good compared to crit rate or crit damage-based gloves. So we're going to talk about this here and just talk about why crit damage is ultimately the best way to go, and crit rate is still better than attack percent. So it's supposed about the way that stats are affected on characters. So if we go here to the total stats on this Alice here, you can see here that we have the attack base stats and then we have the bonuses from the artifacts. And the bonuses from artifacts are certainly bigger than the bases. And so anything that is off of that attack is based off of this base attack. So again, we take a look at a maximum attack gloves. Those are going to be 60% attack. Well, 60% of Alice's attack here, we're talking 800-ish, just a guesstimate there. Going to be over 100, over 700, over 750, probably closer to 800. That seems about right. So that's 800 attack. So, that's good. That's extra 800 attack. Attack is factored into your damage in multiples. So just for ease of use, we'll say Alice has a 4 times multiplier. So that extra 800 attack is going to be an extra 2,400. It's going to be 3,200 damage. And then there's, so that's extra damage. That seems good. So why would I not want to do that? Well, in addition, instead of that 800 additional attack, maxing out the crit rate and then the crit damage is factored after the regular damage is multiplied. So, for example, we talk about the 4 times multiplier we had here. So we look at this number here, and so we've got 5,000 attack. We'll just say 5,000, make the numbers easier. So she has a 4 times multiplier on that 5,000. We're doing 20,000 damage. There's your base multiplier. If you're going to add that additional 800 in instead of on crit rate, for example, that would be an additional 4,000 or additional 3,200. So it'll be 20,000 versus 23,200. That takes the math out. So instead, we take that extra, we get rid of that extra 800, and instead we put that in crit rate. Crit rate then triggers, resulting in crit damage. And crit damage, it multiplies the entire damage number. So instead of doing from 20,000 to 23,000, we instead are taking 20,000 and increasing it by, well, the crit damage here we've got is 242. So suddenly we're doing almost 70,000, actually over 70,000 damage, because we are more than doubling it. We're almost 2.5 timesing how much damage we're doing on that. Okay, that's not 20,000, that's 50,000. So 50,000. Still, 50,000 damage is more than 23,200 damage. So that is the quick and dirty basis of why crit rate and crit damage are more important. Now, why is crit damage the best? Well, one of the things that happens with crit damage is very specifically, in fact, I think I've got a champion with crit damage gloves here. You've got crit damage gloves. Crit damage gloves max out at 80%. So not only are you're compromising between 60% increased attack, you're now talking 80% increased damage, and we're talking a full 80% times all the other damage. These are almost doubling the base damage in a single item. That is why crit damage gloves are so important. And finally, we're going to talk a little bit about speed boots, and just to kind of drill home why speed boots generally are very important. Now, a 6-star pair of speed boots is 45 speed. A 5-star pair of speed boots is 40 speed. And honestly, for ease of use, we'll use the 5-star speed boots because the 5 speed isn't a huge difference, but it definitely is a difference. The way speed generally works is the faster a champion is, the sooner they're going to go because the faster their turn meter fills up. And in general, now there's some weird funkiness of the turn meter that means it doesn't quite perfectly work like this. For a champion that is 100 speed and a champion that is 200 speed, the champion that is 200 speed will take effectively 2 times as many turns as the champion that is 100 speed, beyond the fact they will also then just go first in the first place. So one of the things that you'll hear, I've talked about it, I don't talk about it a lot anymore because the game has certainly changed a little bit, but early on I talk about the rule of 200. The rule of 200 basically means that you want just about every champion to be around 200 speed, if not faster. And that has a lot to do with the fact that a lot of the early game and even some of the mid-game areas you're going to fight have champions that are at 100 speed, maybe 150. Specifically, faction wars outside of bosses, every champion is at pretty much the champion-based speeds. The same with campaign. So if you want to be faster than one of the bosses, you have to, well, not one of the bosses. If you want to be faster than some of the waves, you need to be faster than 105 to 115, which is the highest base speed you're going to fight on any one of those particular floors. And if you want to be able to double that, you're going to want to be 230 plus speed. Probably a little bit plus, just because rounding can end up resulting in the fact that you may end up not going twice before they go first. So that's why speed is kind of important. And again, we get back to speed boots. So 5-star speed boots are going to have 40 speed. Non-speed boots are not guaranteed to have any speed. And if they do have a speed substat for 5 stars, you're going to max out at possibly getting up to 25 speed. So 25 speed versus 40 speed, not too bad. And obviously you can glyph that to be a little bit better. But in order to get that 25 speed, you need to hit 4 times in speed and get the maximum speed roll on all 4 of those hits, which is so incredibly hard on any piece of gear. So, and on top of that, you might look at this and say, well, what's wrong with losing 20 speed? Because we're talking 20-ish speed, you know, that seems like a fair number, including glyphs and other stuff like that. So if I'm losing 20 speed, well, if we're talking about the rule of 200, going from 200 to 180 is effectively 10% less speed, which means that you're going 10% less fast, which means that things like turn meter boosts don't affect you quite as much. It means that increased speed doesn't affect your speed quite as much because your already speed is base fairly low, so you're getting a little less turn meter. It means you're not lapping people quite as often, which can be very, very powerful as well. That 20 speed can make a huge difference. But it's one of these things why speed kills is that it adds up again and again and again. You want a champion that's good regeneration gear so that they can survive? Well, you want them taking turns, so you want them going fast. You want them to put out debuffs so that your nukers can do damage. Well, then you want them going fast because you want them to get out before your nukers go. You want your nukers to be able to do damage regularly. Well, you probably want them going fast because you want them to at least go faster than the waves so they can nuke the waves. But if and when they don't actually clear the wave on the first hit, you want them to possibly take a second turnaround as well. And this is why speed is so important, and speed is so underrated on a lot of teams. I am doing as well as I am in Arena on my free-to-play because I have made speed a high priority on multiple champions, and as a result, I often can win a speed battle, then use that speed to inflict my will on my enemy, and then my enemy cannot recover because I am so much faster that even if I lose control of one enemy, I can gain it back because I'm still fast enough to be able to recover and still continue to take control of a fight. Speed gives you control of a fight. Speed helps you go faster. It helps you do more stuff more quickly, which is really the name of the game, is get as much stuff as you can done before the enemy team can react to it. That's an arena strategy. It's also a wave clear strategy. And it's also a great way to deal with bosses. And if you can go fast enough, you can often never let the enemy take a turn. So speed boots, very, very important, especially early on. And it's not really until you're so late where you can get champions to 240, 250, 260 speed without speed boots that you can start really kind of experimenting on other non-speed boots. Now there's a few champions where you actually really don't need them to go particularly fast, but they are very specific champions, and those champions can use the few nice percentage stuff that you've got that doesn't have speed on it, and that's great. But you don't need to keep a ton of it because you're not going to be using a lot of it because speed kills. So there we have it. 4 topics of things that you may or may not have known. Well, actually was it 4? Was it 5? I don't remember. I barely can remember what day it is. Whatever it is, however many it was, pretty sure it was 4. It's just worth knowing some of these basics in Raid. And I understand that sometimes you don't want to take my word for it as just like, why is Bront saying this? Why is everybody saying this? I'd like to test it out. Well, here is the math for you. Here is laying out why we say what we say as far as what type of things you want to do. You know, is this a raid basic? Yes. Do a lot of you guys probably know all this already? Yes. Hopefully you guys have actually been entertained and educated though. Hopefully this helps a new player not make some of the mistakes that I know a lot of people have made. I know I've made them occasionally where I put gear that's not particularly great on champions. I've used flat stats when I didn't know what the difference was. I didn't understand why you wanted attack percentage gloves. There's, and speed is just, why is speed so important? Well, this is all why we do what we do in Raid. This is why I preach an awful lot of what I preach. And this foundation of knowledge is what helps me build better accounts, helps me help you make good accounts, and helps me help you, on your journey in Raid. So appreciate you guys hanging around. You guys are absolutely amazing. Much love. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. And until the next video, I'm Bront CatHerder.